Call the Newport City Council meeting to order for Monday, January 20th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. All members of the council are present. Others include Laura Dogan, City Manager, and James Johnson, our City Clerk Treasurer. And before we start the meeting, I'd like to have the Fire Chief, Jamie, come up. Yeah. Well, on behalf of the City of Newport, we want to thank you for your 30-plus years of service. With the last 10 years, with the last 10 years being our fire chief. We want to wish you well, and you did a bang-up job for the city, and we're going to miss you, and we want to wish you best in your future endeavors. And enjoy the warm weather. Congratulations. And we have one more. This is a photo that everyone signed that we want to give to you, so you won't forget us up here.
I'll miss you all. Thank you.
You're going to keep some down south, right?
Probably.
Do you want the box for the flag?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. You did? Yeah. Okay, Chris. Sorry. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. On your way.
That's she gets group hug.
All right. We'll move on. The next item is to approve the minutes of January 6, 2020. And I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the minutes. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay, moving into comments by members of the public. The first is Andrew Carbine. Can't quite read it. I think it says interim chief hiring process. You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. First, I would like to thank Chief Jamie LeClaire for his 31 years of service, and congratulate our new interim chief and express our gratitude that this process is over. Despite advice from current and former well-respected career chiefs and firefighters, it was decided to move forward with an extremely short-sighted and flawed recruitment process. One can only think that this was the result of a lack of understanding and knowledge of the fire department and its workings, a personal agenda to get a certain person in that position, or a complete lack of caring for the citizens and property of Newport. Perhaps it was all three. Why the standard procedure of appointing an acting chief was not followed is beyond me. Instead, an alternative process was chosen that showed a complete lack of respect for our current chain of command and our entire department. As a result of this process, 2 weeks of valuable time was wasted when the acting chief could have met with the exiting chief to go over roles and responsibilities. I hope the council and the citizens realized how much their fire department and new chief have been put at risk, and the safety of the entire community jeopardized because of the irresponsible, uninformed, and self-serving decisions. I don't expect everyone to understand the firefighting brotherhood, a bond formed over the unique situation that we literally risk our lives for each other, all for the safety of the community we love. But know that when you disrespect one brother, you disrespect us all. With the lies and manipulation shown throughout this process, it has managed to do just that. In fact, one of the most knowledgeable members of our department, a retired battalion chief from Providence, Rhode Island, resigned based on this lack of respect. Despite all this, we look forward to serving the community we love and continuing to move our department forward in a positive direction, despite the lack of support and leadership coming from the city manager's office.
Thank you. We'll move on. We have Andrew Toussette.
I am actually all set. I think Mr. Carbine said it very well.
Okay, Amy Leclerc.
Yes. Good evening. I am Chief Jamie Leclerc's wife, Amy Leclerc, and a member of the fire department. As well as a member of the law enforcement community, not for Newport City though. Being law enforcement, I am just going to give you the facts. Fact, everyone needs to know that the fire department's budget was the only one cut which affects the public safety. And it was cut by about 18.5%. It should be noted that this budget cut will affect every single one of you here tonight, except for the city manager, who doesn't reside in Newport or Coventry. Fact, Chief Leclerc has fought long and hard battles at times to ensure his firefighters have their life-saving gear, as well as obtaining top-notch fire trucks, which are what's used to respond to your emergencies. Fact, each and every one of the emergencies the fire department responds to, Chief Leclerc proudly and courageously carries the lives and safety of the public, as well as his firefighters, on his shoulders without hesitation. Fact, I know firsthand what a tough decision it was for Chief Leclerc to turn in his resignation on Monday, January 6th, because being the fire chief in Newport City isn't just what he does, it's who he is. Fact, he holds the safety of the public as well as his firefighters in his hands at every single call. But his job doesn't just stop at 5 o'clock. Most of the calls, the emergency calls, the writing grants and taking phone calls come after his 8 to 5 hours, which is all uncompensated. Fact, Lord Dogan called a meeting with the Newport City firefighters and told us Chief Leclerc's pay was in the 50th percentile for salaries for the fire chiefs in Vermont. When we told her that wasn't true, she advised us she would provide us with the figures. When we reminded her that we were still waiting for those figures she promised us, her response was, quote, "I'm not going there with the firefighters." Folks, that's because fact she can't, because the salary isn't even close to the 50th percentile for the pay in Vermont. Because I have those figures if anybody wants them. Fact, the town of Coventry pays $40,000 plus each year to the city of Newport for the benefit of having Newport City Fire as their primary fire department. If either the city manager or the mayor had offered to increase the Chief Leclerc's salary to what they claim he's getting in the 50th percentile, he would have gladly stayed because he loves being your fire chief. Thank you very much. And thank you, Chief Leclerc.
We have Bill Messier.
I'm all set.
Okay. Jacob Hochstrasser.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Jacob Hochstrasser, Chief Leclerc's stepson and a 3-year member of the fire department. I have also observed Chief Leclerc putting in long hours after his normal ones. He has been dedicated to the fire department for 31 years, the last 10 of which he has served as your fire chief. During his time as fire chief, he has brought the fire department up to a very high standard. We train a minimum of twice a month in addition to special trainings throughout the year. Keeping up with training is necessary, as this job is not just aiming a hose at the fire and hoping it goes out. That is why Chief Leclerc makes a commitment to produce firefighters who are capable to resolve any emergency they face. He also builds strong working relationships with neighboring departments by inviting them to train with us. He has managed to lower the city's ISO rating, which is very difficult to do. This means that every resident's fire insurance premiums are lowered. Chief Leclerc also pours a lot of effort into fire prevention, such as Fire Prevention Week, where he goes to several schools to teach fire prevention to the kids, open houses at the station, and getting Newport involved in a state program to provide free smoke and carbon monoxide detectors to houses in the community that need them. Chief Leclerc is a pillar in the community and one that everyone will miss, especially the members of the fire department he created. Because of Chief Leclerc, we wear the fire department's crest with pride. We will all feel the difference with him resigning, and so will you. Which is why I find it very disheartening and insulting that neither the city manager nor the mayor asked Chief Leclerc if there was something that could be done to keep him from resigning, especially since he has done so much for the fire department. But neither of them did. All salaries for department heads and the city manager are public record, and I would encourage all of you to view them and see the large discrepancy in pay. I know the two candidates whose names were submitted to the council to be his replacement are quite capable with their abilities, training, and leadership, but none will ever be Chief Jamie Leclerc. Thank you very much.
Okay. We have Thomas Evans' budget.
On Saturday, I sent you all emails regarding, and I have not heard any response other than a short conversation with Mr. Boyne. So I'd like to, I was very confused and just read the email. At the January 6, 2020 council meeting, I left very concerned about the misleading information given regarding the amount of a 3% increase for administrators. Ms. Dolgan clearly stated that a 3% increase would cost the taxpayers $6,500. Quoting the NEK-TV video recording of the meeting, around at the 30-minute and a quarter, the mayor said, quote, "I vote no on the executive session. The only reason I did that is because of what the manager said. Working on numbers in my head, 3% is only $6,500 as for the administration budget. That's the main reason for that." The mayor clearly asked, does $6,500 represent 3%? The city manager responded in the affirmative. As indicated above, the mayor used this number as the primary reason for approving the budget. At the meeting, I asked for a clarification. Does the $6,500 represent a 3% increase, or is it the differential between a 3% increase and Dan's cost of living or COLA number? The manager then indicated that the $6,500 is the difference between 3% and 1%. If that is so, $6,500 then represents a 2% increase for administrators. However, if a 3% increase equals $6,500 as stated, the total administrative budget would be $216,667. Obviously, that is not the case. If $6,500 is 2% of the administrator's salary budget, then the salary budget jumps to $325,000. That's a difference of more than $100,000, a huge disparity. It concerns me that the city manager, primary author of the budget, would allow such a costly, egregious error. That is unacceptable error to put forth in a final budget discussion. The error leads people to believe that the total administrative salaries add up to $216,667. I went through and got the salaries for the city manager, city clerk, the fire chief, the police chief, Department of Waterworks, or not Waterworks, Public Works, and the city gardener. And the number was more like $438,000 for the budget. 3% of that number is $13,000 and change. That's twice the cost as what was presented at the meeting. The mayor indicated that he supported the 3% increase for administrators because it was only $6,500. Question: if the real figure of approximately $13,000 was revealed, would the vote have been the same? Mr. Mayor and City Councilors, are you as concerned as I am about these errors? You've now passed a city budget based on misleading, inaccurate information, in my opinion. It is difficult to maintain any confidence in the city's top administrator, whether it was an unintentional error or an intentional effort to mislead the mayor, the council, and the public. If there is an error in my reasoning and calculations, please explain. Thank you, Thomas Evans.
Okay. We're going to move on. Public comment. We have Ann Sherlock.
Yes, I had two issues. One, I wanted to talk about Martin Luther King Day and my request originally to have it declared a holiday in the city of Newport. And two is fair notice, because that's what the mayor said he was going to have on the agenda. And now, instead of having that on the agenda, we have 8. Holiday discussion, which I assume may or may not mean Martin Luther King Day. But I can tell you that this does not give fair notice to the citizens of Newport that that's going to be the issue today. For all we know, this could be another discussion of one of the councilmen's holiday in New Hampshire. Or this could be how much money we should spend on firecrackers for July 4th. It's only fair, if we're going to talk about Martin Luther King Day, that we respect him and at least call it by its name and call it a discussion about Martin Luther King. Now, I can continue on talking about Martin Luther King at this point, or am I going to be allowed to talk about it when it comes up in Section 8? It's a question of the mayor who controls when I can talk and when I can't talk.
Well, I'm going to respond to the line item in the agenda. I put it as a holiday discussion. I changed it from Martin Luther King Day because it affects every single city holiday. And that's why I put it as a general holiday discussion.
But that's not what you promised
I said we were
at
going
the
to have a
last
discussion.
meeting.
I'm not going to get into an argument in public comment. I chose to word it that way because the holiday discussion of Martin Luther King Day affects every single holiday that we've negotiated with unions, that the non-union staff have. So if we're going to discuss it, we have to discuss the whole package.
And will
so
I be
that-
allowed to talk about it then, or I will continue talking about it now?
We're done talking about it now, because it's an agenda item, and I will probably let you speak, I'm not sure. You can laugh at me all you want, but I'm just...
That's not okay, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me, I am not speaking to you. I chose the
Why
agenda
would you not
item.
let me speak later about it? And if I can't speak later about it, I want to speak now.
You'll be able to speak later, because you asked for the agenda item, but I can word the agenda any way I want. And when I decided, after sitting down and looking at the request, it affected every single holiday in the city of Newport, between the union contracts and between the non-union folks. And so that's why I listed it as a holiday discussion, because it affects everything. Because we have 2 negotiated contracts with unions. And so that is why I worded it that way. It's my decision, and that's why I worded it. Moving on. The next item is Lori Grimm, ATV vote, thanks.
Hi, I'm Lori Grimm. Mr. Mayor, I live at Mountain View Drive in Newport. And I just want to publicly thank, first of all, Tom Bernier for answering my continued question concerning the ATV parking at the recycle center. He has informed me that it's not actually at the recycle center, it's next door to the recycle center, which helps me understand the ATV parking during the time period of the ordinance. I want to thank Mr. Johnson and the members of his office staff and the people on the elections board who carried out a great election last Tuesday and a vote last Tuesday. And I want to publicly thank the 700 plus members of the Newport City community who came out to vote. It does show that things matter to the public in the city, and I hope that the council and our city manager will continue to remember that as we move forward, that opinions of the city residents do matter.
Okay, moving on. The next item is executive session for fire chief interview, 1 VSA 313A3. And we would need a motion. We have 2 candidates that we are interviewing this evening. That's recommended by the committee that interviewed the initial candidates. And so we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to enter executive session to discuss personnel and also invite Chief Leclerc to sit in with us as requested.
I'll second that.
Well, the motion's been made, seconded, discussion. Well, I must be opposed to that because he has a conflict of interest. His own son has applied for the position. And to me, having the chief in the executive session, are we having him before any candidates come in or during the candidate process? Because he has a direct conflict of interest
Yes.
with his son applying for the position.
Understood. And I believe the request was that he have an individual executive session with us before the actual interviews.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion on it?
I want to know what the motion is. Doing maybe the motion to discuss personnel and have Chief Leclerc present.
Yes.
Are we doing that with
Versus,
the candidates, or is this with Jamie? I don't know. I got to be clear.
My intent is with Jamie, and then perhaps we'll need more executive sessions after this first one.
No, you want everybody to be clear. Are you seconding that, Dan? No. Okay. So I mean, I get the motion right.
Process for your making changes in your agenda.
well, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Everybody vote?
I did.
I heard 3 ayes.
Are you voting no or abstaining?
Who?
You.
I said aye.
Did I? Okay.
You can't abstain on something just because you don't want to cast a vote.
Okay.
All right, we're going in executive session.
Mr. Mayor, can you tell us who was on this committee, who made the recommendations, or how the committee was chosen?
Do we want to, that'll come out after. Let's just go in, we're just going to go in the executive. I guess they're going to hang out there, so we need a motion. The council chooses. Because you always have to.
I'll make the motion to accept the resignation of Chief Leclerc, reluctantly, under protest.
Motion's been made, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded, discussion on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, sir.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We've accepted the chief's resignation with regret. We want to thank him once again for your years of service to the city of Newport. Now we need executive session for fire chief interview, 1 VSA 313A3. We will be interviewing 2 candidates for fire chief. We have James Leclerc Jr. and we have John Harlow. And we will need an executive session. We'll have 2 of them. So we need 1 right now, so we can interview Mr. Leclerc, and then we'll have another one afterwards. We'll interview Mr. Harlow. No, we only need 1 then, right? Yeah, we'll just have 1 go out and 1 come out. Yeah, you're right. I'm making it more complicated than I need to be. I want to make sure we're covered by. So we're covered, okay. So we need an executive session for fire chief interview.
I'll make that motion for executive session for fire chief interview, 1 PSA 313A3.
Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, it's interim, right?
It could be changed. It could be changed. So we need everyone to, I'm gonna have,
Anybody else out there coming in?
okay. We're out of executive session, and now we're moving to item number 5, which is the appointment of the fire chief. Before we have a motion, I want to thank first the committee that did the initial interviews for the fire safety aspect. They were the experts who interviewed the 2 candidates who were recommended to the city council. The council wants to thank both candidates for applying and your enthusiasm for the fire department. And with that, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to appoint John Harlemer as our fire chief for Newport City.
A motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Discussion on the motion? Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. The new fire chief is John Harlemark.
Mr. Mayor, who was on the committee and who picked the committee?
The committee was made up of Chuck Newton, E.J. Rowell, Chuck Newton, Mark Hinton,
Bobby Jacobs
and Bobby Jacobs, and
Jeff Johansson.
Jeff Johansson. They were the committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. They're the ones that made the recommendation to us, the two candidates.
I'm sorry, Mark who?
Hinton,
Hinton?
yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, he's a firefighter in Newport, is that right?
yes.
Yeah.
Chuck Newton and Mark Hinton of Newport City firefighters.
E.J. Rowell, Orleans Chief.
Orleans Chief, one
Bobby
was
Jacobs, Troy Chief.
Troy.
Jeff
Right.
Johansson, the head of EMS.
EMS.
Well,
Thank you.
Newport Ambulance is in charge of the entire...
Newport Ambulance.
Okay, it's not the district.
No,
No,
Newport Ambulance.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you to this council. We're going to move on. The next item is the Newport City School Budget Presentation. Elaine Collins. You've earned your money by being here. But you didn't expect to be here this long? On a school night?
Right. We have another school board meeting tomorrow night too, so that'll just add.
There's a chair right there.
Right here, right here.
All right.
I have to apologize, I had a platter of cookies ready to bring with me and left them at home.
Oh, man, I'm disappointed.
My husband.
Well, that's how the council
I
works.
hear that was a topic of conversation. I apologize for that.
No, your cookies are delicious.
My husband is probably eating them now, so,
I can tell you where I work, you can go
if there's any left. So, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk again. It's a yearly thing that prior to my coming, I guess, was a tradition. And this is my 4th year in the position that I hold at Newport City Elementary. It's a privilege to work with Newport City's children. It truly is. When I came to Newport City, there were 5 principals in 6 years, or 6 and 5 years, I forget the count, but a number of them before I came. And Newport City was a system in need of consistent leadership. I may not have a large skill base, but I show up. And so I've been coming for the last 4 years, and really the job of the work at Newport City is building relationships with lots of stakeholders, with students, with staff, with community members, with parents, with board members, with city council members, with anyone who wants to build a relationship with us. I'm open to that. Our city school should be a vibrant part of our city, and our kids truly are our future. So I sent along a draft of our budget. We haven't voted in a budget. That will be our business of tomorrow night. We know that we need to get our budget to Mr. Johnson for inclusion in the city report, and it's been a very difficult budget season. We have spent a lot of, the 4 years that I've been at Newport City has really been around building systems of support for kids. We have an atypically needy population of students here, and that's nothing against people who have need, who live in the city, but it is a reality of working here in Newport City is that we have a higher portion than many schools of students who require a lot of supports. You may have read in the documentation that I sent along that because we have so many students that require a lot of us, we have lots of positions that probably weren't even heard of when you and I were in school. Some of you are younger than I, so maybe you did. But we have to support students in ways that parents many times used to support students. And because of the social climate, because of social troubles that folks are having, we are providing a stopgap between what might have been provided for kids when they were at home and no longer is. We used to have also a much more vibrant, I think, support system in our community around human services, and that's really fallen away. If we if we say to Human Services, we'd like to refer a student to your, who's in serious need of some support with their family, it might be up to a year before they have the opportunity to get that support. And frankly, our kids can't wait that long. If we do wait that long, it's at the expense of, we're probably not going to be able to house that student in our school any longer. We're going to need to send that student to an alternative educational placement, which isn't good for the child, isn't good for us, and it's also not fiscally conservative, right? Because all of those alternative education placements become really expensive, super expensive. And that's not to say that we don't still have to send some kids to alternative ed placements, but because of the supports that we've put into place, we've been able to stem that tide and really keep most of our kids in our school buildings so that we're not sending them out. It's really best that we do that. We want our kids to learn the skills that they need to be successful in our own community and stay here. So that being said, we have a budget meeting coming up, and tomorrow night we'll vote in, hopefully, a budget, and in the draft that I sent along to you, we've done a lot of deliberation back and forth, some cuts that we've made, because in our initial go-round it was a 25% increase, which we knew was not feasible. We can't bring that in front of voters, and I understand that as a taxpayer and as a mom who raised six kids, 4 of them very large boys, on a single income. I have hopefully brought that fiscal austerity with me to the administrative position that I hold. Last year I came before the city council and reported a 3-cent decrease, and this year I'm unfortunately going to say that our best efforts are bringing us to a 6.48 cent increase. So what that boils down to for taxpayers would be $64.80 on a $100,000 home. So I'm happy to spend lots of time at our informational meeting, February 25th, I believe, in the Newport City Library. Just want to double check that date before I...
February 26th.
26th, thank you. February 26th
That's
at 6 o'clock.
Right?
Yep. Over February break, we're required to have our our presentation informational session for taxpayers within a 10-day window before Australian vote. So we'll do it on the 26th at 6 in the library, and we'll have full copies of the budget and be willing to dig in and dive deeper in some of the changes that we've made and some of the supports that we have in place, and why we feel this increase is necessary for the programming for our kids. So,
Could you answer a couple questions
Yes.
from your memo? I was just curious. Salary and benefits increased $432,000. Is that because the contract, when it was negotiated, was retroactive? Or is there something, is that why that you had to? I'm just curious, because to me, I saw that number. Let's look at some of our departments here.
yes, it's a huge increase. Yeah, so that's the salary and benefit was retroactive because it took so long to come to a settlement on negotiations. That's the reason for such a large increase. The other large hit for our system was special services assessment at the SU was almost $210,000 more. That's really indicative of the need across the SU. We have a concentration of kids in our SU that require a level of support that, this is my 30th year coming back to school as adults. I've never seen kids with this level of need and intensity of need. That special services assessment going up is really indicative of that happening in other places too. And that when we're providing behavior specialists and behavior team assistants and the need for that is great. I was a middle school teacher before I went into the dark side of administration, and I didn't have lots of discipline issues. I could generally manage kids, and I had 4 big boys, and I prided myself on being able to kind of handle a lot of kids. I have 3-year-olds that throw chairs and spit and bite, and that's again not demeaning or saying anything bad against folks that have lots of challenges in their lives right now. It's just a reality of what we have to put into place to support kids. And so to unlearn that and relearn that takes a lot of skill and takes a lot of time and patience and perseverance. And we've really, I think, done some pretty fantastic work at Newport City. When I first started, there were lots of kids who felt like it was really kind of cycling out of control, and we're really at a point where it's a learning institution. You walk through the hallways and kids are learning. It's really our job, right? And because we're being tasked with all these other things, we can't lose sight of the fact that we're really tasked with academics. Kids have to be in a place where they can learn. So,
Nope, that's all I had.
Okay.
I figured it was because of the contract.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
okay. Any questions from anyone? Nope. Well,
all right.
We thank you for coming and,
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I know you gave the dollar amount. Can you figure out the percentile increase?
If you come to the budget meeting, I'll have that for you.
Okay.
because they haven't finalized.
Yeah, we haven't finalized. This is a draft.
It's a draft.
But we'll finalize tomorrow night, but we'll have all of that laid out if you come on February 26th.
Does the school board, Mr. Mayor, does the school board approve that? I don't remember from last year. Or do you approve
The
it?
school board, they're separate from us. It's just been a tradition for the principal of the Newport City School to come to the city council. And so she's continuing that tradition of just kind of presenting an initial draft and whatever. And we appreciate it because I think it's great to get the initial thing out there.
I remember the year before I came, communication had kind of fallen apart, and there were some problems around that. So it's been my goal to keep that communication open. So,
Thank you. So yeah, I just want to make sure that the information that you guys received, is that as an attachment to the agenda? Thanks, I didn't have time to look it up, so thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, great. Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Next year you should ask to be put at the first.
At the beginning.
At the beginning, next year I'll remember my cookies. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Charlie's still here, Laura? Oh, he's right there, okay. The next item is E911 update, Charlie Elliott zoning. We will have a vote on that. We received information in that packet.
The situation is I've been, over the last 3 months, working with the people involved. They got really involved once I started talking to them and explaining the situation and the need for the change. They got concerned about fire protection. They wound up getting the fire chief at that time involved. The end result was we had a lot of emails going back and forth. They talked with each other and pretty much came to agreement over the way to resolve things, which is laid out here. The thing that we need to do tonight, if you look at the map, is the best way to do it, is on the Camp Elizabeth Way, when the section is shown in orange, Hayes Road, we simply want to extend that so that instead of junctioning with Camp Elizabeth Way, it goes all the way out to Bigelow Bluff. And that would make one turn in there for emergency people onto Hayes Road, and would pick up everybody through to Lot 15. And Camp Elizabeth Way would be accessed from the other end. So it should eliminate that confusion. That change only affects 2 properties. One is the seasonal home, the other one is a garage for the same home. So that is the only impact on the resident as far as the 911 numbers. If we go to Paddock Lane, which is on the next map, here the one end we decided to come up with a new street address for. And that's, with the name of what they want, for the name of the street is Lakeside Lane, and that was their decision that one of them came up with, the rest of them agreed to it. There was discussion back and forth between them. And there's only 5 properties there involved. All of them, by coincidence, and it's the same way with St. Elizabeth Way, all of the properties that involved are seasonal properties. So no one's primary addresses or accounts are affected by it. And been in contact again with all 5 of the residents, and this appears to be acceptable to everyone. The fire issue, which is separate from the 911, they had concerns about fire engine access and so on. Jamie went out with me and looked things over, and the conclusion we came to is we recommended to them that when they're here vacationing next summer, if they can, to get together and just call the fire chief and ask him to come down and go over things with them. If they do need some turnarounds for the engines, they can drive an engine in, I think, but then they've got to back out in a lot of places. And so there's concerns there. That's really needs to be dealt with the fire department. So, as it stands now, you approve the 2 road name changes. I will be sending out this letter, which goes to the post office, just to inform them of what's going on. And I will send letters to all of everybody involved, even the ones who don't have name changes, as to what the solution is. And then once that's happened, I will work with 911 and we'll pick a date and notify everybody when the actual change takes place. And then the situation will be resolved.
And everybody there who's having their road name changed is kind of somewhere on informal record is agreeing to that. Having to see somebody coming in later and saying, I never agreed to that. Pretty much they all talked about it.
It was passed back and forth. They've all seen this suggestion.
Okay.
And I had some people come back with different issues, and we've been able to resolve it.
Okay. Great, thanks.
But every one of them, was aware of what was going on. And
All right, any other questions? Then we would need a motion. You probably want to fix the one little typo there before you go to the postmaster.
Yeah.
You need an E on the end there.
Yep.
Any other questions on this? Then we would need a motion to approve the 911 changes and the road, the road name changes for 911.
So I'll move to accept the road name changes for 911.
Motion's been made, so a second?
Sure.
Okay, seconded. Discussion? Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
There's a lot of work involved in coordinating with everybody, and it's much appreciated.
It just takes time working with them, giving them time to, pass it back and forth. They're scattered all over the United States and Canada. So that didn't help any, but the email filled up the gap.
Great.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
I did have one.
Okay. The next item is holiday discussion. This was asked to be placed on the agenda. It started with Martin Luther King Jr. holiday discussion. It was asked to be placed on the agenda. I put it as a holiday discussion because it impacts every holiday in the city. I made some notes for myself as I thought about this whole process. On the surface, it may seem like a simple request, but it's not. There's 2 union contracts which would need to be open for renegotiation, and we would have to decide, are we adding a 13th holiday, or are we going to add this as a holiday and eliminate a holiday? That's something that would have to be discussed. And I found out that non-union personnel already have a floating holiday and can take Martin Luther King Day off as a holiday if they so choose. So if we add that day as a holiday, do we take away their floating holiday? These are all questions that the council has to think about. Then if we add a 13th holiday, there's a financial impact to the city. I don't know the exact number because I didn't get into all that, but there would be a financial impact to the city. Now, Martin Luther King Day. It's designated as the only national holiday as a national day of service. And the intent was day on, not day off. That's what it was. The day of service is meant to not just be one day, but to be year-round. And too often, what we're seeing, unfortunately, in today's world and modern times, people are forgetting what holidays are, and they just consider it a day off. They don't consider it a day of service or a day to honor people, which is unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. As I sat thinking about this, I look at myself regarding service. I joined Rotary because it was instilled upon me to give back to your community, give service above self. And that's the motto of Rotary, and that's what I go by. And I help people every day. Little things. So I do things in the community. And do I do it when I have a day off or on a weekend? That's when I do it. One good example is on my street. It may seem like a simple little bit of service, but I keep the fire hydrant cleaned out. I've been keeping it cleaned out for 20 years so the firemen can come up my street without having to worry about it. That's a little service of giving back to the community. No, it's little things like that. But, I think this also made me think of another quote that I've also thought about, and it's by John Kennedy, and it was always, and so my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Well, I relate that to Newport. What can you do for Newport? That we don't have to provide, or not a very good analogy, but it made me think of that. What can we do for the community as far as helping the community out? It shouldn't always be the city providing this, providing that. We already provide the 12 holidays throughout the year. It's not being disrespectful. Today, I noticed in my travels around in places that I had to go to, the only places that were actually closed was the post office, the banks, the state, post office, banks, state, schools. That's it. Every other business was open. Are they being disrespectful? No. That's just the way I look at it after thinking all weekend on this, thinking about Martin Luther King Day and this discussion. And that's just what I wanted to get out there, my own personal opinion and feelings and thoughts on the day. And now I'll let other council members chime in.
If I can.
Okay?
I sent you an email about my thoughts on Martin Luther King Day. I'll just read what I sent. It was recognized as a federal holiday in Vermont on January 1st, 2001. With that said, it was also recognized as a day of service. On every other holiday, such as July 4th, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving Day, etc. There are activities. For some, there are even rituals for the community to participate in and give meaning to the holiday. It could be fireworks, a parade, or a day set aside as a nation to give thanks. Just mentioning a particular holiday evokes memories and expectations of the day. This gives meaning to the day by our actions. Martin Luther King Day is a celebration of a remarkable individual who changed the nation and also the world. To have a day off for the sake of having a day off does nothing to honor his legacy, and in fact, belittles his life and all that he accomplished. Sitting at home on a couch eating chips and watching TV does nothing to carry on the legacy that he started. He gave his life to make a positive change to the nation, how we view the world. Martin Luther King is remembered as an activist, not a couch potato. To truly honor his legacy, we must not only continue his struggle for equality and community through our own actions, by doing what we can to make positive changes. This day of service helps to empower individuals, strengthen communities, bridge barriers, address social problems, and move us closer to Dr. King's vision of a beloved community. Dr. King recognized the power of service. He famously said, everyone can be great because everybody can serve. Observing Martin Luther King Day, a federal holiday through service, is a way to begin each year with a commitment to making your community a better place. Our service honors Dr. King's life and teachings and helps meet community challenges. Brings people together of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities. Yes, the post office and the banks and even some state offices are closed. Merely not working does nothing if there are not actions connected to the person. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of events occurring right here in the city. The only one I could find was put out by the old Stone House. For the community, to invite the community, to strengthen the community through acts of volunteering. Oh, I lost my place. Even if there was community events, I fear I couldn't fully participate due to my physical limitations. Yet, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. For me, I find my greatest service can be in participation in our city government by attending the council meeting, especially on Martin Luther King Day. In fact, I think it's fitting to have the meeting on this day. I'm sure there are other members of the council who feel the same way, that serving our community and ensuring fair and equitable treatment to all citizens to the best of our ability truly honors Dr. King's legacy. So yes, we have a council meeting on Martin Luther King Day, not for personal glory, wealth, or power, but to serve our residents as duly elected representatives, addressing the needs of the community and hopefully making the community a better place. I'll conclude this with a person we can all identify with, who in my mind is a role model, somebody I think of quite often, Michelin Auger. Every day, rain or shine, she would be on Main Street, making it better. We've all seen her. She did this without pay or seeking personal glory. She served the community every day by doing what she could do. She made changes. significant changes that we didn't appreciate till she's no longer here. Her tireless, selfless work ethic changed us all. But I think we can emulate her on this day of service by serving our community in the roles we accepted as public servants, holding the council meeting and doing it to the best of our ability.
Comment? Kevin, I am humbled by that, and it's an incredible statement. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you for putting so much thought into your comments, both Mr. Charbonneau and Mr. Mayor. However, I didn't hear a lot of emphasis on racial inequity and the homogeneous makeup of our community, where we have no clue what racism is like to experience. And to continue to ignore Martin Luther King Day while the federal government, the state government, and schools are all saying, this is a big enough deal for us to stop our business and think about the sacrifices that so many people made, the sacrifice that Martin Luther King Jr. himself made, the inspiration he provided to so many activists who stepped out beyond their comfort zone and got lynched and killed and raped and murdered. To refuse to acknowledge that racial inequity, racism, classism, sexism, but especially racial inequity. How can we ignore that and call ourselves decent citizens who care about an equitable society? Equity and equality are not the same. Equality means everybody gets the same thing. Equity means everybody gets what they need. And still, in our country and in our community, people of color do not have an equitable shake in society. And one small thing that we can do to change that is to recognize Martin Luther King Day as the holiday that it is. Whether that means that we trade it for another holiday that isn't so meaningful, or we study the issue and get members of each union and staff together and figure it out. But to just say, oh, let's just ignore it, is unacceptable. And I appreciate Michelin as much as the next person, but she's not a person of color. She's not the reason for this holiday. And thank you very much, Ann Chirillo, for bringing it up a couple of weeks ago. I personally hadn't even thought of it. So I appreciate you bringing the awareness and your passion that you spoke of it. And thank you for sharing that with me.
Do you have anything?
No, I said what I had to say.
I think both of the counselors spoke well. I think as a group, you know, one of the headaches we have is that when we have union contracts and everything is set in stone, if you open it up for one thing, you might have a problem. But I think it would be possible to poll the union members, both unions, and see how they felt about giving up a holiday to trade for this one. We could poll the staff members. I mean, I don't know how many holidays, 12, which is pretty much a typical number.
Whoops.
Ooh.
Each holiday right now with our current rates, remember we're a 24/7 organization. Right now with the rates that you have, you're talking about $11,375.07. Once you declare a holiday, you invoke time and a half and potentially triple time and a half. We didn't assume snowstorms or bear in mind the wastewater treatment plant gets a stipend for checking on a plant. We didn't anticipate an emergency call-in from the police department, which is triple time and a half. It just gives you an idea of what you're talking about once you declare a holiday. There's elements that the council will want to consider making a move of this nature.
Well, my idea is that you know, maybe they would give up the floater, you know, and not add a holiday. I mean, I don't know. I know in my contract I get my holidays and I get 2 floaters that I can basically use anytime I want. And I'll tell you what, they're very, very nice to have. When you can just make the decision when you want to take a day off.
So, Martin Luther King Day. I mean, you know, we can talk about our experiences. I grew up in a neighborhood where had crosses burned on the lawn and things like that. So it's not like I'm totally alien, but I'm not a person of color. So I can't presume to be speaking for them because I am not a person of color, obviously. However, I think if we, you know, this is a decision, it's a management decision, and it's a decision on a council level to start going out and saying, let's get a poll, let's see who wants to celebrate Martin Luther King, I think is baiting for racial discord. I think you're baiting the issue. I think it's a management decision. We can serve, we can honor Martin Luther King, we can take it upon ourselves to serve, to give public service in whatever way we choose to. And I think that to go outside the contract to make a decision, I mean, now that sounds like it's what it's being recommended to do, to go outside of the contract sets a bad precedent, because once you go outside the contract and just arbitrarily decide to do something, even that would be great because everybody would get another holiday. However, it sets a precedent, because what's to say that this council or a future council is going to go outside the contract and say, you know what, we did it before, we went outside the contract, so you know what, let's take away ABC. There's, you know, whether you believe in unions, don't believe in unions, or, you know, have a benign attitude towards them, the fact is they are in existence, and that you have to work within what your negotiated agreement is. Those are the rules. You have a negotiated agreement, both sides negotiate. You negotiated for the police department, it didn't come up then. So you don't work, you negotiate, you agree, and you live by your contract. When they come around again, anybody can put anything on the table they want. But I think it's a dangerous precedent to go arbitrarily to work outside of the contracts. And I don't think it's a good idea to start saying, okay, who's a racist because they don't want to take Martin Luther King Day off. I think that's not a very wise or prudent approach to take.
And no, I did not say to come outside the contract.
Nor did I.
Okay, because anytime, if she had something and wanted to reopen a contract, they could make an amendment. So it's not going outside the contract. It's looking at the contract and see if the membership are willing to make a change. So it's not going outside the contract.
So you're going to, this discussion then will go to the rank and file of people, and then what is going to come back of us? If the rank and file say, you know what, we're good the way we are, we don't want to. Then what's going to come back? So then all of our people are racist because they don't want to take Martin Luther King off?
Nobody brought racists into this.
Yes, they did. Ann did, and Julie did.
I'm just going to not say this, okay? Because I am white, okay? But I can tell you the history with my father. When he came, my grandfather moved to the States on Vance Hill. They were discriminated against because they were French-Canadian Catholics. So my father did experience a form of racism. So for anyone to say that, I personally have not, but my family did years ago when they immigrated to the United States. There were cross burnings up on the hill over here, and it wasn't against it was against the French Canadians. And Nicole's shaking her head at me.
I lived that.
And so my father, there was discrimination. It wasn't just, so I applaud what Martin Luther King did, because my father and mother told me stories. My mother went to her grave. She knew who some of the people were who were doing the cross burnings, but she didn't want to tell me, because I think she knew it would hurt me, knowing some of the background. And so, because I asked her, and she would never tell me. But so, for anyone to say that, say my family didn't experience it, they did, as French Canadians, Catholic, especially Catholic French Canadians, moving to the United States in like the early 1900s. And so, I wasn't going to say anything about that tonight, but I felt I had to be heard after hearing some of the comments and conversations, and that's what I wanted to say on that aspect. And then I'm going to go to Nicole.
Well, last time I spoke, I gave you a small list of some of the cities around this state who celebrate Martin Luther, and I went in and looked again, just so you can't think that they're all stupid to celebrate the holiday, or that they want to limit the holiday to just that day. Randolph, Montgomery, Shelburne, Montpelier, Hardwick, Milton, Manchester, Wilmington, Williston, Essex, Middlesex, Bridgewater, Cavendish, Rutland, Bethel, Chelsea, Swanton, Londonderry, one I can't read by handwriting, maybe it says Mount Holly. I'm sorry, I don't know where Mount Holly is even. But and I didn't go through them all. But they're not all silly, and they probably had unions, and they probably had to deal with some of those problems of the unions. And let me tell you, I agree with Woody Guthrie, I believe, who sang the song, "I'm sticking to the union till the day I die." I'm not opposed to unions. And I think that if you picked up the phone, and I'd like to know who you called in the two unions you're talking about in these last 2 weeks, and you said to them, "I want to give you another holiday," they'd go along with it. And it might cost a little bit of money for overtime or triple time or double time. But in the $10,000 range, well, last year you got $200,000 back from the grant you wrote. And only $100,000 went to the offset. So there's another $100,000 floating in there. And in terms of the economics of this city, we want to welcome everybody. If you read anything in the newspapers or on social media today, they're saying to you, you've got to have a place where all races, all creeds, all people of all nationalities feel accepted in the community. And that would be a good starting point for your four-season recreation. And, they say that if you don't learn from history, and the only way you can learn from history is to know it and to live it each day, then you're doomed to repeat it. And I want to remember some of the things that...
I'm sorry, Pam's got a hand up. I'm going to say Nicole's next and then you, Pam.
Some of the other things, I mentioned some of the things that Martin Luther King dealt with, but he dealt with people having to sit on the back of the bus.
I think we know the history.
You don't know the history.
Yes, we do. Excuse me. We do know. I'm not going to spend all night. No, but I'm not going to give you all night. We're not going to give you all night. We all had it. Let me finish, please. We had a history lesson last week. We don't need to go into the whole history. Well, but we don't need to go into hours of history. I know the history. I think we all know the history.
I just started about a minute ago.
No, it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But we don't need to know the complete history
again. I want you to remember that little children were brought by pools down south, and they had to have their parents explain to them that they weren't allowed to swim in those pools because those were only for white children. I don't think any of us have experienced up here what it felt like to be a small black child in some of these places. And in Philadelphia, where I lived, in the 60s, people who managed to become lawyers by going to law school weren't admitted weren't admitted to the bar to practice because they were black up until the 60s. And voter registration for people in many, many areas, black people were not allowed to vote. And they had to put through, in 1965, thanks in major part to Martin Luther King, a Voters Registration Act so that people of color would be allowed to vote. I mean, I'm of Italian origin, Irish origin, we all experienced discrimination, our parents all experienced discrimination, but nothing like that. And we didn't come on slave boats. And, Martin Luther King said, we may have come here on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. Recognize the man. It's holiday. I want you to do all those services all the time. It's wonderful. But recognize the one thing the feds thought was important, the state thought was important, and all of these cities thought was important, and not too hard for the union to be able to go along with the idea, and not too hard for these cities, they're not rich cities, to find the money to pay the differential.
And I want to go first, then
I
Nicole.
just have a question. I understand what you're saying. As a union member for close to 30 years now, I love holidays. Everybody loves a day out. But I'm not, and it could be just me, I'm not seeing how the city shelling out money to give people a day out is going to bring more awareness and more help and more community action to eliminate the racism or sexism. I mean, I get that. In my mind, there's one issue of giving them holiday pay, which is not our concern. It's contracts and bargaining. But, the bigger issue is Newport community, and unfortunately I have to confess I'm not very active downtown and various things that are going on, but there was nothing done. Like the old stone house, they recognized that was built by Alexander Twilight, a remarkable achievement for this man. And to continue his legacy, they came out and they said, here are things we can do. Give blood, volunteer, help a neighbor in need, volunteer from home, share your service. I guess that was my point. What are we doing as a community to not only help the community, but bring us all together?
This is a first step. It's a first step. The recognition of the holiday is a first step towards the towards integrate.
Just go to their union stewards.
Pardon?
Go to their union stewards and say, next time you have a contract, bring this up.
So, could I just say something? Perhaps the first step, is for you to organize a celebration for Martin Luther King Day. So that you can step forward. This effort that I've made is my effort. Berating other people, that's this typical thing.
No, you may think you're berating. You hear the word racism. I haven't used that word.
Forget it.
The next person is Nicole, and then we go to Pam. Nicole had her hand up before you, Pam. I'm going in the order. Nicole, Pam, and then Lori. No, I was going to call on you. I just had to go in the order.
I'm not a person of color.
Are you speaking directly to me?
Yeah, because you said you don't know what it's like to be a person of color. Discrimination, Dan knows what the French people went through. He knows exactly.
Mine also.
Well, I was gonna say, you should know, and I
Yes, I
never,
do.
I would never, when I was at Sacred Hearts and my best friends were color, we were never told, this is different colors, we just were never told that. And when I went to school, I wasn't allowed to take French as a seventh grader. I was born in Canada. I already knew French. So it went, just like Paul says, we were discriminated, and Dan knows because we were all friends. All you had to do was say, those are French Canadians, they're poor and ignorant. I lived it. And when we went to Spain, our best friends were colored. We had the blast when James would take off once a month and go to these different places. The colored people are the ones that would bring us to the base. They would do everything. Never. We ate at each other's houses. We went down to New Mexico, same thing. And then I get up here in the last 8 or 9 years, it's person of color. Everybody gets discriminated where they were. And if you listen to your mother and father, I'm sure they will tell you. It's everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a color or whatever. You come from someplace else, you're discriminated. But it irritates me that only people of color, and they would be my best friends all growing up. But I went through it, and I lived it. And it was not funny. We were allowed to speak French on the street. I did, and I was that little girl that was a strong person because of it. So instead of somebody baiting me and saying, you can't do this, I did the opposite. I was made to learn my French and keep it, and I did. That was not an easy task. So that's just, and I'm not being mean, I'm just saying, it's always a person of color. I'm not a person of color, but I lived it. And I'd be the first one to hug anybody that went through it, and I would fight with them to help get what they're trying to succeed. But to blame everything on just one thing like that, it irritates me to no end.
Mr. Mayor, I'd very quickly like to respond. When my mother and her sisters were growing up in Troy in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, they weren't threatened with being raped every day because of their color. They were the same color as everybody else. They did go to school and were not allowed to speak French, much like you experienced. My uncles didn't walk to work always being afraid of being hung on a tree just because of their color. My ancestors were not slaves. Yours were not slaves in this country. To recognize Martin Luther King Day is to say, the way we behaved in the past is disgusting. And let us never, ever, ever engage in that kind of discrimination against anyone ever again.
And I agree. But I'm saying, did your parents, were they from Canada? No,
Both sets of grandparents immigrated.
No, but your
from
parents
Canada.
are from Troy. I was from Canada. Wow. That was like I said, my younger sisters, Carmen and them, could take French in school because they were born here.
Okay, so
Not
you
me.
win the...
I was going to say,
Well, it's not a
Canadian,
you know,
It's not a competition
you know,
here.
it's not.
No.
I'm just saying,
No.
it's if you're going to bring that up, I want to bring mine up.
Pam is next.
4 of you who are sitting there had the day off today because you work in organizations that believe that Martin Luther King Day should be recognized. So to hear you, Melissa, tell us that we should be out there organizing, I think you might not want us organizing anything because I think we've organized enough around here and already pissed you off, more than enough. However, that was inappropriate, that comment, by the way.
Well,
And it's on camera, so now the whole world can see it. You all had the day off. Why would you deny that to the city of Newport? It's important. It's important as a statement to say that this city observes Martin Luther King Day. If your organizations, if your schools think it's important, why shouldn't the city? That makes no sense to me.
So, Mr. Mayor, I just have a question, and it's more of a question of logistics. So I looked up U.S. federal holidays for 2020, and there are 10 federal holidays listed. One of those is Martin Luther King Day. I assume in Vermont we would have to add Battle of Bennington Day, August 16th. Is there any way we can find out what makes up the 12 holidays that the city does recognize for city employees?
We have a list. I can't list.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I know there's a day after Thanksgiving that's generally considered a comp time holiday.
Yeah, you have Indigenous Peoples Day in October. You have Bennington Battle Day, Washington's birthday, also known as President's Day, Memorial Day.
Is one of those a floating holiday?
Yes, Indigenous Peoples Day.
I'm sorry,
Indigenous Peoples Day is a floating holiday for admin people, so they could easily switch it over to take off MLK if they wanted.
I get up at 4:30 in the morning,
Yeah,
so we're going home.
May I say something?
Yes.
Normally requests for holidays come from within. There's a process. It's not people coming to an organization's door and saying you have to take this holiday off for your raises. That's essentially what's coming out today. I don't understand how the employees haven't come forward to request this off when they already have their list of holidays. The contracts are going well. Given that 2 council members turned down a budget over $6,500, are you now saying that it's okay to penalize the 3% for non-union employees, but you're willing to shell out $11,300 for a holiday? I mean, there's a disparity there that's not making sense for me. We don't get Bennington Battle Day, just the police contract gets Bennington Battle Day. Excuse me, the Public Works contract. Yeah. And you still are coming out with, that's $136,500.84 a year in holiday pay. How can you arbitrarily say you're going to wave your wand and we're going to give you another holiday when 2 members turned the budget down that was really incredibly conservative? There's a disparity there that at the starting gate is missing the point.
So there we go again. She misunderstood me, you obviously did. I said you could open up for negotiations to see if they would give up one of those other holidays, whether it's Indigenous Day or one of the others.
Well,
And
then we'll offend the Native American.
they still get their 12 holidays. I know.
Are we done?
Values versus money. That's the difference. There's no disparity. It's very different.
You can open up the contract all you want. I can speak for the Public Works Department, I don't know about the Police Department. They'd welcome another holiday. They're not going to give up one. Just saying.
They don't want to give up one?
They wouldn't give up a holiday. They'd welcome another one, but they're not going to give up a holiday. I doubt it.
All right.
So
Think the
can
time
someone
is-
make a motion and have a vote?
Well, I'd like to propose what I proposed earlier, that representatives from different sectors come together and negotiate and see what would work. Not automatically spend another $11,000 or just arbitrarily take this one for that one, but actually have a discussion about it and come to some agreement rather than I'm right, you're wrong. That's not a motion, and I don't feel that we shouldn't even have to make a motion to have a rational discussion. Can we just commit to discussing it?
Well, if you're going to talk to the unions, it matters.
You've got to go through a process.
It's a
You can't even
process.
say that-
No, you have to have a process. You just can't open a contract. You have to contact the union steward. No, the union guy. It's a whole big process.
It
And then
doesn't come from the council
No.
to do that.
it's supposed to come from union members.
You've got the process reversed, and you're setting a very dangerous
Right.
precedent for future negotiations.
Right. All right. We need to move on.
So we can't just agree to talk about it?
I don't know what more there's to talk about. It's coming down to having to deal with the unions. In the union contract. And that's what it's coming down to. Because, we could vote in a holiday, but it won't be recognized by the unions because they have a contract. You just can't, we can't just vote a holiday in because of the union contracts. There's a
Your process
process.
is reversed.
Yeah.
And you're setting very dangerous precedent. And, Mr. Mayor, if I could be so bold as to recommend you move on to new business.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the discussion, and I suppose we'll find another way around this.
Or not. It says something.
It does.
Okay, new business, Mr. Johnson.
Yes. It'll be that time of year for liquor license renewals. This one came in a lot earlier than most of them, but this is renewal for, Azores, not the deli or something, but
The liquor store side.
yeah. So I just need everybody to sign on the back page, it's just renewal, like every year. No,
Is that the only,
in person.
is that the only new business?
That's all I got.
Don't you have
There'll be more of those, they haven't even mailed them out yet.
loan
because-
documents for the car?
Huh?
Loan documents for the car?
Oh, yeah. Next meeting I'll have loan documents for a new cruiser. It's the new one to replace the one that was totaled. Cruiser was totaled back in July or something. The insurance money we got paid off the loan, and there was $9,000 or $10,000 left for a down payment on a new one. So we've got to have a car.
Yeah.
So just replacing the one that got paid. That'll be in the next meeting or sooner, depending on when Ellen gets me the documents. But I don't know what the rate will be, but I suspect it'll be in the 2.5%, 3% range. Thanks for reminding me. I got to write it down.
That's it, new business, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah.
Anything new?
No.
New?
No, thank you.
Anything new? 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 Old business? Anyone? Anybody have any old business? Then we need a motion, the next meeting will be Monday, February 3rd. And now we need a motion to adjourn at 9:55 PM.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.